How much do they know about you? And exactly who are they? Hint, as for who they are, I'm thinking of dragons. If you're ready, let's go and find some of these mysterious creatures. Before we crack on with the content, I just want to quickly say we are passionate about this stuff. Please like and share so that others may too discover this content. We create materials around education, technology, AI, business, social issues and futurism. Join, subscribe, follow us. Let's now crack on with this video. Do you know what an open secret is? The dictionary definition talks about a supposed secret known to many. However, data brokers are not a secret, and they don't hide. Yet many people have no idea who they are. Imagine for me a savannah. You probably know or suspect that there are lions, and you will take common sense measures to be safe. Now imagine the same savannah, but there are animals the size of pyramids this time. But this time we stroll along as though there is nothing to worry about. Suppose that analogy does not work for you. Try this one. Imagine you're on a journey from A to B. Parallel to you, there is another road with a spy on it. Wherever you go, this spy follows you and observes everything that you do. Worse, a written record is kept. Now here is the question. Why can't you see this spy? Now I'm going to mix my metaphors. Guilty as charged. Why are we ignoring the elephant in the room? Why are we overlooking the pyramid in the savannah? Getting back to the spy and their record keeping, to add insult to injury, the information that is collected about you is sold on. The company that bought the data will blend it with their data, which might also include offline data, and will then again sell this on. When I started planning for our Udemy course on data protection and privacy, I began with GDPR. While researching, I found a couple of TED Talks that briefly mentioned data brokers. A few Google searches later, finally I looked into the fabled Alibaba's cavern to see data brokers piling up gold and treasure, your gold and my treasure. If we look at these data brokers, and we've seen this chart before, we can see that there's no manner of information types or data types that we can pick up on. We can pick up on the stability of our customers. We can pick up on their buying power, pick up on their history. How reliable are they? If we lend them money, are they likely to pay it back? What are their habits? What will they spend the money on? So you can see, whilst this diagram is quite disturbing for the amount of data that's held, to an insurance company or to a bank, there's some very relevant information that will help them enrich their data and for them to make better decisions. Hopefully from the infographic, you'll have seen the extraordinary number of categories in which you are graded and rated. Multiply that up by the global population and you will see the need for petabytes of storage. However, the story does not end there. It is not just the amount of data, but how many different ways you can cut and dice. Each category could have different values. The number of combinations is significant. Now we're going to talk about the data brokers themselves, and we're going to name a few of them. So to begin with, we have Epsilon, and this was taken from their homepage. And you can see the amount of data they collect. They really try and understand the profile of a customer. They are one of the largest data brokers of households. and their aim is to predict consumer behavior. Now, the value of the data broking market is about $200 billion, which is quite extraordinary. If we look at a few of the others now, so we've already come across Acxiom. They operate in 62 countries. They have records on 2.5 billion consumers, and they say they have 68% of internet users. And their main market is advertising, so helping companies deliver better advertising results. Nielsen, you've probably heard of Nielsen. They've been around since 1923. They're into market research. They gather data from 100 different countries, and they've come up with techniques for audiences. And they've probably written the book. They've probably set the standard in understanding audiences. Next one is Experian. They have records on 800 million people and 99 million businesses. And they've actually been really clever. They invite you in, and I've done this, so that you can check your data and you basically update your data for them. Equifax, similar to Experian, they've been around since the 1930s, and they're pretty much used for consumer credit, so identifying individuals and businesses and whether or not they're worth doing business with. Now, we'll come back to Equifax later, and what's really interesting is that they had a data breach, and they're having to deal with $1.38 billion of consumer claims. That's really interesting, and we'll come back to more on consequences when things go wrong with data. CoreLogic, they're one of the largest consumer information companies. They're used to screen tenants using AI, and they provide wholesale solutions for carrying out background information checks. Now, the one I'm really interested in is Oracle. Oracle have come from nowhere. They've been buying out other data broking companies. They're essentially a technology company. If you've been involved in IT corporate, you'll know that they were incredibly famous for databases. In fact, they bought out a company that I used to work for, which was Sun Microsystems. So I would say, watch out for Oracle. They've got amazing ambitions, and they have the technology pretty much. They own the database space, and they know what they're doing. So we've discovered the names of some of these data brokers, and we're going to move on now and try and understand how we might use these data broking firms. So what are the applications? So the first one we'll talk about is marketing. How much better would your profitability be if you could market to those people who had the money, who were interested in your products, and who were ready to buy? So that's a perfect use case for using data brokers to help companies find customers that are worth their time. Next, we're talking about fraud and crime. Now, just imagine for 1 minute you're in charge of a government tax office. Wouldn't it be great if you could create some training data for the types of people who had carried out fraud? If you could bring in all this extra data, enrichment, to understand their patterns. So once you'd understood how your fraudsters behaved and what their profiles were, you could then run that against your entire tax user database and then find out the people, have them flagged as potential fraudsters. Wouldn't that be a great system for our government? Fraud system? And who knows what they're already up to. So having huge amounts of data, personal data from these data brokers could really help organizations and governments clamp down on fraud. And then the use case that we've been looking at, which is all around risk mitigation. Would you want to work with someone who's defaulted, likely to default, or someone who has a financial position which is rather precarious? Would you rather work with someone who had a good history, was shown to be reliable, was an upstanding member in the community? Yeah. So obtaining data, enriched data that allows you to identify people and mitigate the risks, and for you to work with people that are not going to let you down. Again, that's another use case which would be highly attractive to companies. So you can see just from this slide that there is an overwhelming strong case as to why we might want to use data brokers. Let us now consider the value of your data. So if I ask you the question, how much is your data worth? Would you be able to answer that? Would you be able to hazard a guess? Is it $5, $10, $100, $1,000? What would you guess? According to Rita, they have an app where you can download your data. They've looked at several ways of how you might price up and work out the value of your data. So a simple methodology might be you look at the value of a company and you divide it up by the number of users. But they go into much more detail. They have suggested that your data is worth $247. That's interesting. Another company, Permission, they've actually gone a little bit further and said, well, let's not just look at marketing data. Let's look at your medical data. Let's look at your most intimate data. And what would that be worth? And they'll come back with a figure of between $2,000 and $3,000. In some scenarios, our data could be worth around $250. In other scenarios, if we were in the market for expensive drugs, for example, our data might be worth between $2,000 and $3,000. So my question to you is this. Why don't we know about this? Why is this hidden from us? And let's use a car analogy. So if you had a car sitting on your driveway, would you be happy that someone came along, took your car, started driving it, and maybe earned a wage using Uber? So taking people from A to B, B to C, and then charging for those journeys. And at the end of the day, they leave the car back on your drive. So they've used your car, they've earned an income, they're happy, you've still got your car, it's been used, but you've had no value, you've had nothing that has come back to you. It's quite a strange world where physical assets can be used to generate income, and the digital assets that belong to you are used by others. You don't get anything from it, and people are making money on your back. Yes, of course, you could argue that, well, I'm using Facebook for free, I'm using Google for free, so there is some kind of trade-off. But the comeback to that would be is, well, is it an equitable trade-off? Is it worth you giving $247 of your data for being able to post a few cat pictures? $20 a month, is that worth it? Is that trade equitable? And we're not having those discussions. So that's the point I wanted to draw out here. Quite astounding. We need a dragon. In the West, dragons breathe fire and cause chaos. In the East, they symbolize fertility and are associated with water and the heavens. Perfect. Dragons explain our dilemma perfectly well. For privacy and protection, dragons give us the positives and the negatives. How do you feel about data brokers? Were you surprised? Did you think I was throwing a conspiracy theory in your direction? Unfortunately, no. These beasts can fall foul of GDPR, and some have done so with massive penalties to help them on their way. Dragons, spies, lions on the savannah, and pyramids. What does it all mean? It means our data is traded left, right and centre, and I think we should care. How about I quote Eric Schmidt, a past CEO of Google? You have to fight for your privacy or you will lose it. We have created a course on Udemy to look at data privacy and protection. The dragon represents our dilemma. Big data can have positive and negative impacts on us all. We believe a better education around the concepts and issues raised is the starting point for us to take action. However, we can see and identify the big data brokers. In many ways, they are not the problem. So what else is going on? What can or should be done to make us all safer? Enroll on our course to find out more. Here's a takeaway for you. At the very minimum, think about using a privacy-safe browser such as DuckDuckGo. We're making more of these videos. See you in the next one, or better still, enroll on our course. Thank you.